Okay, welcome everybody. I'm Megan. I'm one of the leaders of the Women in Architecture group here at AIA East Bay. Here's a photo of our group at one of our early meetings. You can see our speaker tonight, Jill, on the left or right of the image. And we meet monthly on the fourth Thursday of every month. We actually don't have any programming scheduled yet for September, but we're encouraging folks to sign up for the Organization of Women Architects and Design Professionals annual retreat up in Sonoma County. It's a great event, so encouraging everyone to sign up. And then in October, we have a workshop scheduled called Waking Up to Conscious Leadership, which will be a 90-minute interactive session where we'll explore the 4 pillars of conscious leadership, which are awareness, connection, insight, and purpose. And we'll learn practical tools to help us shift from reactivity to creativity, from fear to trust, and from burnout to growth, learning, and thriving. So it should be a great event. Encourage everyone to sign up. And then tonight, we have Jill Bergman here with us to speak about her path to fellowship. It's the FAIA fellowship. And so I'll start with a brief bio of Jill. So Jill Bergman has built a career in service to advancing healthcare design. Through leadership, mentorship, project work, and knowledge sharing, she has dedicated herself to the vocation of elevating a profession and its practitioners. Jill's love for connecting with people and continually learning inspires her involvement with professional and community-focused organizations, often in leadership roles. She served on the board of directors for the Association of Medical Facility Professionals, the NorCal chapter, and the AIA Academy of Architecture for Health as the co-chair and lead for their colleague-to-colleague mentoring program. Committed to advancing gender and equity in the profession, Jill has presented at the AIA Women's Leadership Summit and the Equity by Design Conference. Her writing and illustrations are published in industry trade publications, including Medical Construction and Design and Behavioral Health Executive. So join me in giving Jill a warm welcome. And I'll hand it over.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much for coming, and thank you for those who are online. And I know we're back to back with Kamala tonight, so I understand there is a desire to also hear her career speak. So hopefully with our smaller group tonight, we'll be able to walk through some of this and then still get out on time for enjoying that. So do we have any other FAIAs in the room? Welcome. And do we have any FAIA hopefuls in the room? Anybody thinking about pursuing? Maybe someday. All right.
I think we have more.
Excellent. I am told that if you are actually truly interested this year or next year, hopeful, that AIA East Bay is looking to form mentoring partnerships. And so if that is a path you want to go down, please reach out to AIA East Bay because there's a lot of great partnering that can happen in helping you on your path. The one thing I do want to share is if you know one person's story, you really only know one person's story. The actual fellowship process varies widely, and there's a lot of room for everybody at no matter where you are in your career path. And so, you know, as I talk about my story, I'd like, let's see if I can get this slide advancer. Is that gonna go? That's not gonna go. I'd like you to think about your path. So again, my path is only one story, it's not your path. So hopefully this will just share some ideas and get you thinking about where you are. That's not gonna go with the slide advancer, so we'll go this way. Nope, there we go. So who am I? I appreciate the introduction. It's a big mouthful. I tend to have a lot of different letters on who I am and how those have been a part of my career, and I love to dissect that just a little bit. Not only do I have my FAIA, I have my American College of Healthcare Architects, my specialty in healthcare, and have the fellowship with that organization as well. Again, I've got a lot of these different tags, but through them all, they've really brought about, in my career, a career that's been tied to professional development and service back to industry that have been above and beyond and outside of my job. And that really is how I tied a lot of my fellowship pathway. So what I want to share today is just a little bit, and we're going to kind of zip through these, don't be overwhelmed, but what is the FAIA? How would you get it? Why would you get it? How do you apply? What is it? And a big part of it is, what is your individual ripple effect out in the industry? And then if you are going to do it, it's a journey, prepare for it, and don't go at this alone. And what might you think about doing now? And so, and ask questions. And so that's a little bit of what we're going to go through today as I quickly walk through. So what is this big thing? It's FAIA, this fellowship. It's the American College of Health, it's the College of Fellows under the AIA. And the College of Fellows themselves define it as this highest membership honor, and under the architects that have made significant contributions out in the industry. To me, what that really was a recognition from my peers on what I am doing in my career, and definitely, this huge honor. And they had the really nice formal picture of me standing up, but I knew everybody on stage, and so I loved it because when I went up there, I was hugging everybody, so the pictures all got messed up for me. But, and that to me also reflects a lot of my career. My career is not my job. My career really is out in that industry. The number of people that are considered architects in the United States, somewhere around 250,000, I think they said. I'm going to juggle with these numbers. The number who are actually AIA members, somewhere just over 100,000, just under. The number who are FAIA, just around 3,000. So it really is that 3% of the industry. And then even, I don't know if it's good or bad, but what we want to see more of is women. Women really only represent 1% of that. There's about 800 women that have FAIA. So we've got more to do in order to build up that equity and to continue to rise up our leaders. I'm not going to deep dive into this, but the College of Fellows is a collective of many things. There's not one path. My path was one of these 6 objects, and so I just really would encourage you, as you think about your career journey, there's many different ways to achieve this and many different ways that you and your career can shine. Mine is one of many. So why would you even get this? Why would you even want this as part of your career? Why have it? And I'll be really honest, I wanted it. I thought this was a career that I had. I felt very much a part of my profession. I gave back to my profession in service, and I felt like my career did have a ripple effect. The college really started as a way to shine a bright light on those architects that had impact. And in my involvement in my profession, I just felt like that was hand in hand in what I did. What I'll also say is I didn't know when I wanted it. And I think that's another part of my journey I wanted to share is I really thought of this as a lifetime end of career achievement. And I probably would not have applied when I did had I not been asked by somebody. Somebody kind of said, hey, it's about time you should go do this. And I think that was a really important step for me, is to hear that from somebody else. And so basically, the application process is like many things across the AIA, lots of forms, lots of paperwork, and lots of documentation of your career. And again, the first step I'm going to say is reach out to your local chapter. They're the best first step. If you find a connection there, you can talk within your firm, you can talk to your peers, you can find another fellow. The one thing I think that is so important is, if this is a journey you want to go down, talk to somebody. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to do it all on my own, and then if I get it, I'll tell people. And I think that's the biggest mistake. The one thing that the college really is a collection of your peers. So I think I encourage you to reach out and find people, talk to people, and talk to people years ahead of going, because there are so many things you can be doing now about your career that make sense to pre-position for that. So the best thing I can tell you is, no matter when you want to do it, talk it up, talk to people, and make that a part of who you are in your journey. I think it also holds yourself accountable. So, and the one thing that the FAIA, the application, tells you is, so what? So what's your ripple effect? What is your impact on the profession? And this is where I'm going to kind of do a little bit of a dive into my career, because your ripple effect is different for everybody. And I think that does a lot of introspect of what has been your effect outside of the projects you do, or was it the projects you do, and does that project work have that ripple effect? This was funny because after I spoke at the Women's Leadership Summit in 2019, in 2020, their photo of me was their advertising campaign. And I was like, my ripple effect was I talked, I was out there. So way back in around 2015, 2016, I did what I don't recommend. And that is I looked at every hour I have ever spent working from the time I finished college. And I had this new software tool, this Tableau, it was new to me. It's like Excel on steroids. And I decided to chart my career and my hours. And it was this fascinating study of what I did from the time I started architecture school to now. And then I dauntingly looked at, not time cards, but a good guess of what is a 40-hour work week, really? And then I layered onto it this view that I had never seen before on myself of how much was I paid for a 40-hour work week? Because my career has been up and down, and sometimes I was part-time, and sometimes I was at companies that did that, 42.5-hour work week, and then I was in college, or I took these big chunks of time off, and it was a real reflection of that. And then I added, well, what was I doing for lunch? Was I even taking lunch? Was I not taking lunch? Was I having long business lunches? Was I skipping it? And then I layered on professional development, because again, that's so integrated into what I did. And, whether I was in college or studying for the AREs or being a part of a profession, how many hours was that really? And then I, at some point we all got laptops and I started working at home a little. And what was that? And it was this really great way to look at the strange and interesting gaps across my career, because I love data. But the one thing about this, as you look at this whole thing, is that's just work, because really life is all integrated into it. And so across my career, you got ups, you got downs, you got babies, you got time off, you got life between jobs, births, deaths, all these things are a big part of that life. And this is kind of what brought me through my career. And I just feel like that was a real transparency in looking at what was I doing? And I realized those gaps were a really important part of my identity. And they were also very expensive. And I said, if I'm going to have more of those gaps, I better start planning for them. And so that's what I did, is I started planning. I started looking forward in my career. And what was really interesting is I did do this in around 2017. I actually identified this as a different kind of a trip. But so what's interesting is I really put my FAIA goals late, much later here. And I was brought forward with a couple of other women who came up to me and they said, not only are you ready for it, not only do you need to do it now, but we need you to do it so you can pull others up with you. And you need to do it not as a lifetime achievement award, but as a visible note to our industry that you've risen to that point of leadership and you're ready to pull others. And that pushed that goal a lot forward for me. But we did do a really awesome 12-week road trip, and we did do an awesome Grand Canyon trip last year. And yes, kid number one is about to go to college. That's where I am in this whole crazy career path. So as I walk through a couple of pages of my application, what I want to say is when I started my application, I was so intimidated by the online applications. I was so intimidated by everybody else's career. And then I put together this picture and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool too. So I want to say, don't be intimidated by anybody else's journey. I really think everybody has an amazing story to tell, and you get your story too. And so as I share this is my career journey in a different way. At first I had tracked it over, what does that look like in time, and what does that look like with these strange gaps? But this is my career journey of where and how I have done mentoring and knowledge sharing and healthcare practice and work throughout my career. And the one sneak picture I'll tell you is there's a big part of that where not a lot happened, but with cool graphic people, it looks like I was busy. So, I do want to share that part of that career timeline that you tell and how you tell your story, it's important to see the big picture and don't worry about those gaps. All these gaps, they're a part of me, but we found a different way to tell that story when it came down to presenting it as a solid career path that really did have impact out in the profession. So if you are going to apply for a fellowship, I think one thing you do need to think about, it is a journey. And so this reflection back on your own career and this forward as you fill out this application, it was monumental. And I will say that I was unprepared for how much information I thought I had and how much information it took to dig through. And digging backwards. And I had an awesome teammate who was like, did you know you had an AIA Grassroots Award? And I'm like, good Lord, somewhere in this house, I probably have a copy of it. Or I had 10 years on this one committee and not a single photograph of myself to show of it. And so the digging of this career backwards was really hard to do as a single event in the journey of my fellowship. It was wonderful too. It was really neat to look back at all of these pieces. But one of the things I continue to have this message is no one's going to love your career more than you and your mom. So, and your mom's not going to save all the photos. So, I can't say enough that this journey of documenting oneself really should start today for anyone, no matter what you're doing, is really grabbing all these pieces so that you have this knowledge. Because half of the journey for me was just digging through my past and past files and boxes of information to be able to share what I could show. And I think the other thing that I've said again is you can't do this alone. Jim Diaz, my sponsor, an amazing sponsor, my professor, teammates, this is what it felt like when I got my AIA fellowship from the ACHA, and just so many people, friends, family. I think this is something that is so big that you can't do it alone, but you also need to think about all the different kinds of people you want around you, from sponsors to letter writers to graphic designers to writers, to archive diggers to photo credits to phone a friend, because you're going to get to that point and say, I'm not worthy. You're going to get to the point and say, this is too hard, or I'm going to try next year. And you've got to have that cheerleader who can tell you, nope, it's all going to be okay. Tomorrow's going to be another day. Take a deep breath. So, figure out who your team is, because that team is going to help you on whatever path. And again, I say this for the FAIA, but this really could be just about anything you're approaching and how you want to document your career or move forward in any kind of an awards application. So I'm not going to go deep into this. This is very specific to anybody who really is like, I am ready to apply for my FAIA. I got a copy of what was called Ruth's Rules, and Ruth was one of the advisors out of Ohio. And I got it through a gentleman named Peter Bardwell, and Peter added his onto it. And then my writing partner was Katie. And so this is actually Ruth's and Katie's and Peter's notes on all these different rules. And I have a fair number of handouts if anyone wants to take them with you. And for those online, I believe we have a PDF copy that we can email out. And these are just, if you're in the nitty-gritty of applying, things you really need to keep in mind. And I think first and foremost is, if you truly feel that the fellowship path is you, is make sure you've had that career that has national recognition. And that is a journey for some people, is showing the breadth and depth of your ripple effect and the breadth and depth of your connections. I think you also just have to take out of the mind that there's no quotas. Every year is different. Every year is a new journey, a jury, and every jury has a different number of people who've applied, and that it really does take time. Prepare for your journey. If you wait until August to think you've gathered everything and you're going to submit in October, you're really not setting yourself up for success. So organize. Again, I'm not going to jump through it because I overdosed on words, and we don't need to overdose on words. But I think what's really important, and I can't say it enough, is don't forget your local chapter. And this is not the time to be humble. This is the time to talk about yourself so much until you vomit, and have somebody else who can talk about you so much until you're sick of yourself. Because the AIA doesn't really care about the fact that you're a part of a team. They want to hear about you. And so this is not the time to have your marketing firm put something about your firm. This is all about you and what you've done, and they totally get it. There's probably 500 people that were on that project. They don't want to meet those 499 people. They want to know about you. And the other thing is, this is the AIA. So if you've done something with the AIA, put them first. If you have a whole list of different things, put them first. So, you know, a lot of different things happen. I will also say the application process has 6, what they call objects, 6 different categories. And I think that you and your sponsor, you and your team need to talk about those. I think that's one of the most instrumental spots for you to really think about what was your career path, what is your big ripple effect, and how is that reaching out there. And I struggled with this one a long time because I straddled 2 different categories. And it finally, my tipping point was, what do I have the most of? And that's how I ended up choosing when it was between 2 different areas. And I think lastly, be prepared for this to take 2, 3. I met somebody who got it with my class. That was his 7th try. And I think if that's what you want, take as many tries as you need. Know that every try is a different try, and every try has a different pathway to it. But not many people get it on their first try. And I think that's something you just need to keep in mind when you do it. It doesn't mean you failed. It just means you've got to clean up a couple of edits as you go forward. So I've got those. Again, that's a really deep dive for anybody who's really kind of within the next year or 2 and wants a copy of those. But I think as you think about your own career journeys and where you've had impact, or where you want to start thinking about that, is not only do you need to do it now and start today, but you also need to think about not cramming everything into it. I love this image because it's like we can fit 7 tennis balls in the container, but they're no longer tennis balls. And I think the one thing you really want to think about is cramming the good stuff into what your process is, and thinking about the good things that are a part of your career. And I think when you do that, the other thing is are there pieces of your career that you could do now? And I speak, you know, AIA Young Architects Award. Are there AIA Firm Awards? Are there AIA Project Awards that you can start applying for now that build that career depth and breadth? Are there conferences where you can go to, either speaking or meeting other people? If you know you need 7 FAIA letters or the 5 letters, how are you going to talk to those people now? Are you building mentoring with them now? Don't wait until you start your application process to start your journey towards this. I think the one thing I would say is your career is, you know, it's so diverse and so wonderful, and it reaches in so many different corners. Lean into that and lean into who you are and bring that forward. But start now, start today. Document, get pictures of yourself leading a meeting. Get pictures of yourself running committee chairs. Talk to people, reach out, find somebody, say, I want you to be a mentor for me for the next year. Now they know you, now they can write a letter for you. What are you doing to strategize across the breadth and depth of your career today to build a career that has ripple effect? And I think those are the kinds of things that really contribute to who you become. I am a member of AIA San Francisco chapter, and have been a San Francisco chapter member, good standing. Way back in my career, I was on the AIA San Francisco Board of Directors. Now, I work in San Francisco, I live in the East Bay, and I've been really excited to join the East Bay chapter, but I very strategically stayed in the San Francisco chapter because that was part of my career, was being on the Board of Directors and having that connection, and then having that chapter vouch for me as a member in good standing. That was part of when I started to think about this path, something that I did. And then also, this is that grassroots award that I had to dig through 4 boxes to find. You know, so find those pieces of paper that become important as part of your journey, and think about the breadth and depth of how you can have a ripple effect. I think the best thing you can do for your career is to have that career that has outreach, whether you apply for it or not. it just builds a richer community, and our world really needs a bigger, richer community. And so we need all of your stories and we need all of your involvement. And so reach out and have a great ripple effect. And so I totally rushed through this, but wanted to be sure to leave room for questions. I'm hoping that maybe Sydney might be able to help us if anybody online has questions. I welcome anybody else to share any other thoughts about their career path. And we have a phone, I think this is a survey. It's a survey. So for those online or those here, if you want to scan it, you can give a survey of what we've talked about. Rosemary joined us. Thank you. And Rosemary is a fellow? Fantastic. Congratulations. Bill, what did you apply under?
Design.
Design. Excellent.
I would just echo what you have said. People applying are not going to do it by themselves. And I don't know about other chapters, but the members of this chapter that are fellows, Fs, as we call ourselves, are not gatekeepers. We are here to help. There's a group of people that participate every year in this sort of thing. We don't always have applicants, but when we do, the same people show up and everybody participates. So it's really important to make contact with the chapter if you're not in this chapter or whatever it is, and make sure that you are getting the support from your chapter. If you're not, maybe look for another chapter.
Yeah, San Francisco chapter was supportive. They assigned me a mentor who I met with, which was great. And that person was outside of my sponsor and outside of my letter writers.
And I know, this group is to support women in architecture and women in AIA. When I went to school at Cal, about 40% of our class was women. When I came back to teach at Cal 10 years later, already 50% of the class. Now it is more than 50%. And the chair of my department and the dean of the school here are women. So there's tremendous opportunity. And if women who are listening to this who want to apply are finding in their firms that they are not advancing the way they think they should, or the way that they might be advancing in a women-owned firm. If you can hear me, they should look the same way they might look for another chapter. They should look for another firm, because there's no reason. There's more than equity in the profession now in terms of participation.
There's just not enough.
There are not enough women, but there are plenty of women-owned firms and plenty of terrific designers, and there is no reason that women should be stuck in a firm where they're not making progress.
I just wanted to share with Jill one more ripple effect. So when I heard Jill speak last year at that AIA Women's Leadership Summit, and she talked about finding your career North Arrow and the career mapping. And so I got the chance to speak this year at the Pacific Coast Builders Conference, and that was my first big speaking event. And my topic was about inspiring others. And so I referenced like 5 different ways that I had been inspired over my career, and yours was one of them that I referenced that idea. So it's really cool to hear that about the ripple effects, and you and all of us who probably have ripple effects that we don't even know about.
And we're doing this for the sake of those who are online. Rosemary, what was your fellowship?
My fellowship, I sort of fell into really, and one thing I've found is that people who do sort of non-standard things in the architectural field have a somewhat easier time of attaining fellowship. It's harder if you're a great designer, I think. I mean, you've got to be a really great designer. Whereas if you do what I do, which was combining structural engineering and architecture, and getting into politics in terms of retrofit of unreinforced masonry structures, Nobody was competing in that, and the AIA was saying, oh, wow, architects can do this. It was sort of a totally new thing for the AIA to be in, and so it sort of fell together for me quite easily. And I've worked with some other people who have been in similar fields, in education or leading in seismic safety, and I think that it's a little easier for them to focus. And also working with Bill and others with candidates, people come in and try to put together something that shows they're a well-rounded architect. And that's a mistake. You don't need to be a well-rounded architect. You need to be excellent at something, some facet of architecture, and known for it nationwide if possible, but nationwide isn't always necessary. And you're not in competition with anyone else. The year I became a fellow, 6 people from the East Bay chapter got fellowship. And that's unusual, but everybody was so delighted. And now that I have been on the fellowship committee for many, many years, I mean, we just rejoice when anybody gets it. So when they come to us for help, that's our job, is we want them to get it. We want to coach them, and what we've learned over the years that has worked, we will certainly share. And people bring a draft to us, and they're scared to death because they know we're going to rip it apart. And we do, but we explain to them that our goal is to get them that fellowship. And so that we try to make suggestions that will help. And sometimes it does take tearing the whole thing apart and starting over because of not having one aspect of what you did that you're going to emphasize. And so that's something to think about. Are you a specialist in any one thing? And that's very helpful.
Thank you so much. That's excellent.
There's a couple questions
I
in the
think
chat.
there might be a question online.
Yeah.
Oh, now you got the audience going. Nice. I know. All good input. Yeah, please.
Just another note, Rosemary knows me as the old curmudgeon that is always requiring of applicants to have really good graphics and excellent photographs of excellent work. And you have to admit it, we're all architects. You get your architectural record or architecture magazine, and what do? You look at the buildings. And regardless of what rubric you enter your application under, there's likely to be some presentation of architecture in it. And you have to be really rigorous and ruthless with yourself to make sure that the work that's being presented is of a really high quality, and that the photographs and the drawings are of extremely high quality, because we're all used to seeing only the best in the magazines. And the jury is going to be looking for work at that level. So, you know, if that photograph doesn't help you, take it out.
No, I think that's good. So one of the questions was, what do we do if we have no photos of ourselves running meetings? Okay, well, I did run into that problem. As I said, I had 10 years on the committee, so we used the logo. And I think part of my application, my exhibits were very heavy in my involvement in the AIA. And so I leaned into other photos or photos of peers or different people that I helped in. I ran a scholarship program, so I had pictures of the students who were getting the scholarship. So I didn't always have pictures of me, but I had pictures of the ripple effect of those that were affected by those committees I ran. You have up to 10 exhibits, I think, that you can have in your document. And exhibit could be a project, exhibit could be working on a committee, exhibit could be working with structural engineers, exhibit could be a code committee that you were a part of and, you know, city codes that you changed. So you think it could be a book you wrote, it could be a series of articles you've done. So think far and wide across your career, but I think that is so important is it's not everything you've done, but it is what you're excellent at. I also had the benefit of, I applied for the American College of Healthcare Architects, very similar program. They were sort of my first draft. So I got through under my healthcare specialty with them, and then 6 months later applied for the FAIA. So I was grateful to have had a first draft go through, but now I'm all effed up. So let's see. Can you share what two objects? Oh, I was vacillating between object 2 and object 3. Object 2 is professional practice. Object 1 is design. Object 2 is professional practice. And object 3 is, I think they called it leadership to the industry. Led the practice, led the industry. It was an interesting phraseology, and they may have even changed it. And I struggled because the way you read it when you first read lead the industry, it sounded like you had to be president of AIA to apply under that one. And I've never been president of any chapter. I've served on committees, I've served on a lot of things, I've chaired a lot of things, but I've never been president or vice president. I've never been that top tier. And I had a lot of different arguments with my sponsor and other people about whether or not I should lean into my professional practice of healthcare design or all of my involvement in leading the industry and service to industry. And I just felt like my story that I could tell was so much better of all of my ripple effect out there by leading mentoring programs and leading scholarship programs. And that's what I ended up leading into. Does the application change much? Not much. I think you can start prepping now. I think, again, it's not that you have to prep your material right now, but save it, like save your project work, get those photos of yourself, get that documentation together, and then also do some strategy. It's like, oh, I want lead the industry to be my thing. I'm going to go join a committee now. I'm going to be more active in my AIA chapter. I'm going to, build the resume. We do this when we chase a project. If you're chasing a project, you get to know the client, you figure out who's on the board of directors, you figure out all these people, you find out what are the things that make that client move and tick, and what they're passionate about, and what are their core values. Well, that's, chase this in that same way. Figure out who do you need to know to get good letter writers. Figure out what your core passion is. Find your leadership. I think those things become so much a part of a richer career no matter what you do. Thank you for typing all these questions. All right. Thank you. All right. We got a picture of Jill. Jill with a microphone. Me and I love speaking. I don't know. Thank you. Maria. So I worked with the San Francisco AIA, and the San Francisco AIA chapter paired me up with a mentor. Was that the question? How did my chapter help me? They assigned me a mentor from day one who was not my sponsor and not my letter writer, but it sounds very similar that this chapter has, is they partnered me up with a mentor who read all my drafts, and that meant they had a group that looked at all the drafts, gave me specific feedback, and then they as a chapter actually had to write a letter that said, Jill is a member of good standing, and the AIA San Francisco chapter supports and endorses her application for fellowship. I know every chapter has something different. I know that Dallas, you have to get on their waiting list a year and a half in advance. And if you miss it, then you can't be on that year's cycle. So every chapter has a different threshold of what they offer and help, how they mentor, how they partner others up. And I think Bill's advice was awesome. If your chapter isn't giving you the support you need, go find another chapter. I think it's just important to be a member of good standing. You can have two different ways. Either a chapter is signs off on you being a member of good standing, or you have to have 10 architects, 5 of which are fellows, all sign advocating your path to fellowship. And this is in addition to letter writers. So having, yeah, so I sought the chapter feedback. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming out. I think there's another lady who's going to be speaking tonight who's going to have a much more awesome presentation. But value those who were able to join online, value those who were able to come out here tonight.